This is a video on using rich darks in your watercolor paintings. And for a long time, rich darks weren't even available to the watercolor painter. But now we have colors like perylene green and indigo and mineral violet. And these colors will really enrich your paintings, and you should add them to your palette. For a long time, it was commonplace to darken colors just by adding black. But that dulls the colors and you'll end up with muddy mixtures, so that's not the best solution. If you learn to use rich darks in your paintings, they'll become more dramatic and you'll enjoy painting a lot more. So let's get started. When you're mixing darks, don't stir them up. It creates muddy colors and it won't work as well for painting. I'm going to demo this. This is a nice dark color called indigo, which I like a lot. And one of the things I do, I'm cleaning out my brush here. This is actually a lighter color, cerulean blue. But watch what happens when I put the two together. It makes a beautiful mixture if I don't stir it up. And then when I put it on the paper like this, I have a nice rich dark, but it has bits of cerulean blue in it as well as the indigo, and then the mixture that the two of them make. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to mix black. I'm rinsing out my brush again, shaking or wiping some of the color off of it, or water off of it. This is ultramarine blue. Beautiful, nice, rich, dark color. I'm going to rinse my brush out again. Remove some of the water from it. And let's use burnt umber. Put that next to it. Push the two together. And make a nice, rich, dark. That's a little bit on the warm side, a little bit of the brown dominating, so I'm going to add a little bit more of the blue to it carefully. You can see how dark that gets in there. It's a nice rich black, and yet you can see bits of the blue and bits of the brown in it. And that's the way I like to make black, so that you can see different colors in it and a few different values as well. To me, that's much more interesting than flat black, which comes out of the tube. Some of my favorite darks, and you won't really be able to tell them by color, but I'll point to them. They look mainly just like very, very dark colors until you put water with them. But this is mineral violet. I like that one a lot. This is indigo, which I use quite a bit for rich darks. This is perylene green. And this is burnt umber. Those are all very, very dark colors coming right out of the tube. I'll show you why I like this color, perylene green, for example. I've got my brush nice and wet, and I'm lifting some of this out of the palette here. I'll put it directly onto the paper. As you can see, it's a deep, dark, rich green, and a kind of a smoky green. And now I'm going to add a little bit of water to it, so you can see as you add more water, it maintains its color. It's just a lighter value, and that's one of the things that works really well with that color, and that's why I like it. Now, when manufacturers like Winsor Newton come out with new colors, they try to make colors that you can't mix on your own. This color, perylene green, would be very difficult. I could probably do it, but it would take too much time and wouldn't come out as nice and even as this if I was to mix it on my own. So when they come out with new colors, the idea is to produce colors that the artist typically cannot mix on their own. That way you're enticed to buy them. I prefer not to mix complements all the time, at least, not to gray colors. So complements are opposite on the color wheel, like red and green. If you mix those two together, it dulls them both down. Now I do that deliberately in some cases, but typically I don't mix opposite colors on the color wheel just to make them darker or just to make them gray. I prefer to do a different mixture which will have richer colors in it. I'm going to demonstrate mixing complements right now so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is just a neutral red, cadmium red, which is nice. It's actually warm. Cleaning my brush out again. And I'll just put some olive green with that. And it does dull both colors down a little bit, you can see. But to me that's a little bit muddy and I wouldn't use that very often. Now let's try another one. This is lemon yellow, which is a cooler yellow. I'll rinse the brush out again. Get it nice and clean because these are delicate colors. And I'm going to put a little bit of mineral violet with it. Just barely push the two together. So yellow and violet are opposite on the color wheel. That makes an interesting color. And that one works a little bit better. Doesn't get quite as muddy. You can see the yellow and the mixture and the violet in there. But typically, except maybe in skin tones on the figure, I don't mix complements very often. It's harder for me to keep the colors as rich and bright as I want. Now we're going to look at 3 of my paintings and examine the rich darks. The first one is Paris After the Rain, which I painted on the Seine in Paris. The second is Quiet Canal, Venice, which was a studio painting. And the third one is African Princess, also a studio painting from a trip I took to Africa with the Denver Zoo. All 3 are done on Fabriano 140-pound cold press watercolor paper with Winsor Newton tube colors. So let's take a look. This is one of my watercolor paintings called Paris After the Rain. And I'm using it as an example because it has some nice rich darks in it. This shape of the trees up here is ultramarine blue and olive green mixed together. And you can see a number of different values in here. And that's the way I like it to work. And through here, you can see the darkest value where there's a little bit more of the dark blue. And over here, there's a little bit more of the olive green. So rather than one flat, rich dark, there are areas that are different values and different colors in there. Another example is in the water down here. This rich dark is a combination of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and ultramarine blue and indigo. And you can see how this rich dark melts right into this other rich dark along the bottom of this boat. And on the bottom of the boat, the rich dark is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. That creates some nice soft edges in there. Now what the rich darks do in this painting is they show off the lighter colors because you have a big value contrast. You have a rich dark against the lightest part of the painting. Some of this is actually still white paper. So you have a dark dark against a very light color or light value, and that creates contrast and interest in the painting. This is another one of my paintings, and this is called Quiet Canal in Venice, and we're zooming in on part of it because I want to show you some rich darks again. In this area over here, I wanted to play this boat down so that it didn't command as much attention as this one back here. So there's a lot of rich darks in here that are running together and melting together and creating some interesting soft edges. In this case, I use some alizarin crimson and Indian red, which are both dark reds, and I mixed those with ultramarine blue to get some of the dark, deep blacks and browns in this boat. And where this mooring pole comes down, there's a little bit more red, but it's the same colors again. And it's these edges which soften and blur and melt together, which is the part of the painting that I like. It cuts down the emphasis on this part of the painting. Now up here, you have a rich dark, which is burnt umber, and it contrasts nicely with the white paper on the boat, which has just a little bit of cerulean blue in it. So again, it's that rich dark against a light light that creates a lot of attention. Same thing here. As this growth comes down along the wall, this moss comes down and turns into the water. Right where it hits the water, it gets a lot darker and a lot richer. So you have a value change of this green coming down and turning into a really rich dark. Up here in these windows, this is pretty much pure indigo for this dark inside the windows. And again, there's some light colors around it for a really nice contrast. This is another one of my paintings, and this was from a trip to Africa that I took with the Denver Zoo. And this is a young girl that I saw dressed up getting ready for a ceremony. And the reason I wanted to use this painting was to show you this background, this real deep dark green back here is all perylene green. And yet you can see different shades of it in here and different value changes. I do not try to get a perfectly flat color in something like this. To me, it's more interesting if you can see different values and different shades of the color. And look how this deep dark green sets off some of these lighter colors, like the white clay on her face and the lion mane headdress that she's wearing and the white shells that are in her necklace are all set off by these deep dark colors. Now in here, in the area of her neck, there's a color that is just about as dark as the background, but it's much warmer. It has more red in it. And it has alizarin crimson and a little bit of blue and a little bit of mineral violet to make it that dark. But the important thing is that temperature change, this being cool and this being warm. You can also see a darker value across some of the white clay on her face, which just gives volume and modeling to that area. And up here in her headdress and down through this jewelry, the beads, there's a lot of rich darks that run together and create dark darks, but they show off these lighter colors like these beads right here. So when a painting is not working the way I want, the first thing I look for is the values. Do I have enough rich darks? Do I have enough of a value range in the painting? If this had a lighter value in the background, it wouldn't be anywhere near as dramatic as these areas, like this rich dark against this white clay on her face. So the first thing I look for in a painting, if I'm not sure it's working right, is the values. And oftentimes it's just a matter of going back and darkening some of the values. Now when I do that, if I go back and darken something like this perylene green area, I only darken part of it. Like this area right here up against the side of her face is a little bit darker. If the whole thing was that dark, it wouldn't be as interesting. So if I decide to darken an area, I'll go in and just darken parts of it and see how that works. So many watercolors, especially in the past, look washed out. I call them anemic paintings. And it's because they didn't have a nice value range. They didn't have the rich darks available that we have now. And it just typically wasn't the way you used watercolor a long time ago. But now we have a lot of rich darks available. And I've showed you how to mix a lot of rich darks. Just keep the mixtures clean, don't stir them up. So practice mixing some rich darks and using them in your paintings. I think they'll make the paintings more dramatic and you'll like the results. So this is Dennis Pendleton saying until next time, keep on painting.